This is going to be an interesting episode because today we're going to be talking about the 6 key ways you can persuade someone to do something. And as soon as you hear that or maybe read this title, you may be worried about, whoa, what are we trying to do? Are we trying to convince somebody kind of in a snake oil salesman way to push them over into a new thing? But I don't think that's exactly what we're going to talk today about. Instead, I think we're going to focus on what are the 6 core principles, according to Robert Cialdini, that cause someone to move from one position they have to a new position on whatever it is you're talking about. So hopefully in the case of our watchers, it's people talking about Jesus and about the gospel. Maybe people are coming to you with a position outside of that. On today's episode, we're going to look at unpacking these 6 core ideas. And I've got Daniel Hall on the show. Daniel, welcome.
Thanks. I'm ready to be persuaded. Persuade me that these persuasion techniques work.
So these are not my ideas. And so, that's upside down. So just right here. Oh, here we go. So Psychology of Influence and Persuasion by Robert Cialdini. You can see that I've read this book a bit. I love this book. So these are not my ideas, but they come from this book. So please go support Robert and buy this book. It's pretty amazing. There's obviously a lot in there, and we're going to cover just a tiny bit of that today. But let's kind of bring up the 6 core things so we can just kind of briefly talk those through, and then we'll get into it. So the first one is reciprocity, and we'll talk about what that is in a minute. Scarcity, authority, consistency, liking, and social proof. These are the 6 things that we're going to kind of work our way through in this episode. How do you feel about us doing an episode where we're talking about persuasion?
I'm in the masses that are like a little reluctant. Like the wording is a little. I'm subtly cautious.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, well, low key.
Today,
cautious.
I'll convince you. Today,
yeah, persuade. That's what I'm here for. Persuade me and any audience members that may be a little hesitant.
I think the deal is that when we present something as big of a change in life as, hey, we're talking about you should believe there's a God in the universe, and that God is Jesus, and Jesus cares for you. That's a lot of steps for somebody to go through. And I think we tend to just jump right in with like, well, this is the answer, the end. And we don't think through like, well, what causes people to make a shift in their belief systems?
Right.
And so that's kind of, I think, why I want to spend today kind of focusing on these things here.
Yeah, it's not tricking. It's not trickery or a lie. Like you said, it's not a snake oil salesman deceiving anyone. It's how are we taking someone through a process of changing their beliefs?
Right. Our brains are wired a certain way, and we do respond in different ways. So let's kind of look at those. Let's start with the first one, which is reciprocity.
Big word.
It is. It just means that if you give me something, I feel like I should give something back to you. I mean, the slide says people are obliged, so they feel like obligated. They have to give back to others, whatever the form of, and I thought this was an interesting way of describing it, not just a gift, but a behavior, a gift, or a service that they've received. So this is kind of the deal about reciprocity. Is an example would be like if we go to lunch today and I buy your lunch, then you may feel like, oh, I got you next time. I'll buy your lunch next time we go out to lunch. Or if I buy you a gift for your birthday, then when my birthday rolls around, you may feel like, oh man, I've got to give you a gift.
Yeah, I'm obligated.
Right. And there's some funny videos about that we use in some live presentation stuff. But I think that the gist of it is that across every culture, all around the world, when somebody is given a gift, we feel like we have to return the favor. Right. Or even in a smaller thing with behavior, I listed that because if I come in and I'm like really down, something's terrible has happened in my life and I'm really sad, and you were feeling really upbeat and happy, but man, I am really sad because a real tragedy, a real terrible thing happened in my life, then your mood is going to change, right? You're going to, because I'm giving you sadness, you're gonna give me back sadness. You're not going to be like, if I told you, I don't know, whatever the most terrible thing is, my wife died or something just super terrible.
Oh man,
you're not going to like respond with a joke.
No, right. It's empathy. I think this is part of that empathetic part of it. It's this natural. I want to relate to you, like just by instinct.
Right.
I mean, I think psychologically and marketers and influencers have used this built-in part of us forever.
No, totally. So it's whatever it is, but whatever I give something out, and you suddenly feel in a position of wanting to give something back.
Yes.
So at its core level, if we think about like we're trying to talk to people, trying to have conversations with them, electronically, online, through digital communication, whatever that is, then at some level, we've got to figure out, well, what is it we can give them that they feel like they could give something back to us? So for instance, time. Like we can give you time. We're going to have a conversation with you. Through Echo, the person text in, we can turn around and have a conversation, and now we're actively talking to that person. It's not a bot. It's not something terrible that no one actually wants. It's a real person actually concerned and wanting to do that. So that could be an example. It could be an example of giving information. So maybe that's in this form. So like one of the things we're doing is we're giving away free content on wherever you're watching this. Don't give away all the
secrets.
Oh, no. But hopefully, as our huge viewer count watches this, but as they watch this, then it'll turn around and they'll realize like these guys give us value a lot. And so then the idea would be, hey, we should give them back value. Well, how can we do that? Well, you can pay us money for Echo. You can sign up for Echo or Learn Socially or some of the services and softwares that we build.
Yeah.
So that would be an example of that. So that's reciprocity.
Reciprocity.
So it's receiving something back and giving something out. So that's kind of that. And so now let's go ahead and bring up on the slide our next one here. So we had reciprocity, and now we're going to move over into scarcity, I think. Yeah, scarcity. So scarcity, people want more of those things they can have less of.
Of course. The grass is always greener. I mean, there's so many phrases around this.
Yeah, but it's true. And so, this is a big problem digitally, because in the digital sphere, there's kind of an unlimited amount of digital delivered things. So then you have to get more creative. But before we get to that, I guess let's just define it in its more basic standpoint. So we just had Black Friday a few weeks ago or recently in the United States. And so here, that's a big day right after Thanksgiving where a lot of sales happen. And one of the things they'll do is they'll have, 20 of some item that will be really cheap. And everyone will rush and get those.
Yeah, they do.
Because there's only a few of them. And they'll rush in and get them because they know as soon as that stock is gone, they're gone. Now, the store may have 200 more in the back.
Right.
But they'll have that many out and they'll grab them.
That's the while supplies last verbiage.
Yeah. And so, man, if you're on the fence of like, should I do this or not? And you're like, I think this is a good idea. And you see there's only like 3 left, and somebody goes and grabs the other 2 and like gets excited about the price of something and moves off, and now you're left with just the last one. The odds that you'll buy that are really high because the scarcity is so strong. It's like, oh, this is the last one.
You don't want to miss out.
Yeah.
Like, what if I'm supposed to have this? Fear of missing out, FOMO hits us.
FOMO,
we have to get that last one.
Yeah. So when we think about scarcity, I think it's important for people to realize that this is a hard thing when we think about Christianity stuff, because it's like, well, I mean, God's there, like he's there yesterday, today, and tomorrow kind of thing. So he's not in scarce supply.
Right.
But there is a kind of a stereotypical scarcity play, which is what if you died tonight?
Right.
Right.
Sure.
So that would be an example of an evangelist using because we're not promised tomorrow. We don't know what's going to happen tomorrow.
That's right.
Right. And so if you're not promised tomorrow, then what if you die tonight? What will happen to your soul? That's a scarcity play. And it's not wrong that it is, but it's important to know that exists, and it's important to know there are good times to use that and bad times to use that. And these 6 principles are not inherently good or inherently bad.
Yeah.
Right. But these do cause a person to act. So when we're thinking about ministry stuff, one thing would be like, how can we encourage the person to take the next step? Well, maybe Maybe we'll have some online training that we're going to be presenting, and maybe that goes through as like a cohort or a group of people.
Right.
And so because of that, you can only allow a certain number of people in on that particular
Like to
thing.
sign up. Like
Right.
maybe it's a limited time, a window is only open for so long.
Right, yeah, because maybe we're all gonna so first is maybe there's only a limited number of people that can sign up, right? So that would be like, hey, we only have 100 slots because we only have 10 coaches and each coach can coach 10 people.
Yeah.
That would be like a reason to have scarcity around. Another one would be timeline. So like, hey, we all start on New Year's resolution time on January 1st. That's when we kick off the class. So you can't wait till January 2nd because January 1st is when the class starts. And if you try to do it beyond that, we've already all started together as a group, right? So that would be another scarcity example of timing. Is time would be one. Quantity is one. I think there's a lot of different things we could add here, but the summary would be scarcity is a tool that causes people who are on the fence of like, am I going to do this or not, to finally take that initial action of doing it.
They've
Right?
been persuaded.
Yes, they persuadified. All right, so that leads us to our next one, authority. And so authority, people follow the lead of credible, knowledgeable experts. So the people that are experts, that's who they want to follow. So we want to figure out who is an expert. So hopefully, if you're watching this video, hi there, if you're watching this video, then hopefully you're seeing us as some kind of experts in some capacity. We're still learning, by the way. But I do think what we see is when we have an expert who's willing to consolidate the information and present that in a way, we're drawn to that, and we're like, yes, finally, someone has synthesized all of this. They've brought this down. They've made this available to us. Experts are very powerful. So the question is, from a ministry perspective, are you establishing yourself as an expert in your field, right?
Yeah.
And so I think when ministries start to get out of the main thing that they're awesome at, that's when their expertness goes on a quick and fast decline.
Yeah.
So, we've all seen examples of like a ministry that's like really awesome at this thing, and then they try to branch out and do this other thing, and they're just not great at it. And so their expertness is quickly seen as like, oh, they don't know any more about this than I do. They're not great at this. And so then we've watched those declines happen. And then conversely, we've seen ministries that really stay hyper in their lane, really great at it, and everyone can see, well, these guys are awesome.
They're really excellent. They stayed in their lane.
Right.
They are an authority in a certain subject or language.
Yeah, absolutely. Next one we'll talk about is consistency. In consistency, people like to be consistent with the things that they have previously said or done. I think this one is one of the top two contenders that are critical that the church and ministry seem to miss. And so here's the deal. So in this book, in Cialdini's book Influence, he talks about this example of he goes to a neighborhood and he asks if they would put up this ridiculously ugly recycle sign in their yard. And it's really purposefully made to be big and ugly and terribly designed. And everyone's like, absolutely not. Really bad idea.
Sure.
So then he goes to another neighborhood, same stats and same income level and everything's very similar statistically. And he says, hey, will you sign this petition saying you support recycling? And everyone's like, oh, yeah, I'll totally do that. Because this is a much smaller action, right? Yeah. Absolutely. Who would say recycling is bad? This is great. So they sign that. And then a few weeks or some amount of time later, they come back with the huge sign. And they say, will you put this? And they don't call it an ugly sign. But will you put this huge ugly sign in the yard? And everyone's like, mostly they said yes.
Huh.
So not 100%, but I don't remember the number, but we'll say over half said
interesting.
They would do that. So why would half the people or more, I think it was 70 or 80%, put the sign in the yard?
Yeah, wow.
And the answer is because they made a previous commitment to something externally. They've externalized something. And that external commitment, even though it was small, I support recycling. Here's my name and address in my signature. That small external commitment made it where they were about to be incongruent. So they were about to say, like, wait a minute, I just externalized to people my position on something, and then I've just gone ahead and Now they're asking me to do you support it by putting the sign? And I'm either going to have to say no, which now I'm going against the thing I've already externalized, or not.
Yeah, interesting. Like, it's almost like humans are built to want alignment.
Yes.
And we fight against an internal or psychological dissonance, to use a kind of a fancy word.
Yeah.
But an unalignment.
Yeah.
We fight for, like, no, I think we were actually talking about something off camera earlier that I was mentioning, like there's a tension in me about something, and that I wanted to find alignment so that I could feel, I'm going to use very hard, this not exact great English, but so I could feel true.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
you know what I
that's
mean?
right.
That's
we have an inward
description
and an outward person.
Yeah.
And we are always seeking to be in alignment with whatever we've externalized.
Yeah.
So externalized takes the lead, which is weird because we are internal. Like we're a mind, and we're a body, and we're a spirit and soul, and we're internal mostly. But our physicality of us, or the externalization of our thoughts and beliefs, drive whenever that dissonance happens. So here, actually, let's just go into this example.
Yeah.
So Facebook has a problem.
Okay.
Facebook's problem is that it's all externalizing whatever beliefs I've had.
Right.
So in the past, where maybe you and I spoke, I'm talking like years ago, pre-internet, if you and I were at a coffee shop and well, I guess we wouldn't be at a coffee shop pre-internet. We would be at a at a diner. But if we were having a conversation about politics or something, first of all, I've got to look at you. You've got to look at me. We've got to feel each other's reactions. We've got to experience all that together. Well, now what I can do is I can just externalize a position, even a small position. And when I do that, and we'll just use politics as the example, and let's say I politically side with a candidate, or maybe, let's just use a candidate. So let's say I'm for candidate A, and I come on Facebook, everybody, you should vote for candidate A because candidate A is great.
Yeah.
Well, I've made this externalized statement over here. So now my body, my internal, has to be in alignment with that. So if candidate A starts doing some really dumb things,
right,
I have one of two choices to make. I can either gloss over the dumb things that candidate A is doing and just go, well, I've already said I support him, or I've got to make this huge, very, very hard momentum movement of saying, I was wrong. Candidate A is not great. And that is super expensive to the ego, to the personality, to all the things. That is like the hardest thing to make a movement on. So the deal is, if you could get people to make these even small commitments externally, it's going to push all of their internal belief systems over to that.
Yeah.
So
I've heard people in debates or in a conversation, street evangelists, ask, probably like kind of try to get people to make micro decisions. So like, would you agree that, and then they kind of state something pretty mundane, like, and then they can say like, yes, I agree with that. And they kind of lead them down to a decision tree that now with this point, like if they turned back and decided to change an answer, they would feel a dissonance.
Right.
So there's like, well, but you've already aligned with it. You agree with certain question.
Sure.
Why wouldn't you agree with this other thing?
Right.
It's a really interesting tactic. And now knowing that psychologically we want to stay, it's painful to some extent. I like how you said expensive. That's a interesting word to choose, to break that alignment, especially when it comes to publicly.
Right.
If we put it out there, you got to put your money where your mouth is.
That's right. Yeah. And so Facebook's problem, back to that, is I think a lot of people have made maybe smaller politically leaning claims, right? To one side or the other. This isn't about politics specifically, but whatever side, they've made a statement that they've externalized. And then that's, even if it was just 1 degree off of center, then they've kind of stayed in alignment. And then their body and everything internally has to get in alignment with that. And then they make another statement, no matter how small. And after they've even made just one or two, there's some variance, but it doesn't take long before you're all the way over on one side or the other. You're on a side.
Yeah.
And so America specifically, and maybe the whole world, but America specifically, because I can speak to that, has this huge problem right now. And Facebook has a huge problem because everyone's now created positional statements, even from maybe small statements over the years, but they're now on a side. And so now we have a left and we have a right. And this is a huge problem for America. And I'm not saying Facebook is the only thing to blame,
right.
But I do think our understanding of permanence, of we've gone on record, we've posted it online. It's not like, well, Daniel and I had a conversation by ourselves, and then after that, I really saw his points, and I now am changing my position a little bit. It's not like that anymore. I've externalized in the biggest way to the biggest audience of billions of users potentially that they could have seen my ideas, and so therefore I am on side A or on side B.
Yeah.
Anyway, all that to
it's
say,
powerful.
It's super powerful.
Humans have a new problem. We've never had such a megaphone to so many people.
This is right.
And so I think we're kind of in the first few generations that are having to figure out, like, how do we take this like built-in natural psychological thing and wrestle with the technology that's now wrapped around us? Like, I made a statement. Now, oh gosh, I have to back this up and even further it. And like all of a sudden you're at some extreme that you may not have even meant to get there.
Right. So with great power comes great responsibility. But with this, I think what we're really trying to say to everybody here is that this tool is a tool that you could get where maybe we see some ministries where they try to jump all the way to like the finish line of like, hello, my name is Andre. Are you ready to say a prayer and accept Jesus as your personal Lord and Savior? And it's like, whoa, wait a second. Maybe what we should do is start asking for much smaller, little tinier movements, but something that they could externalize. But that's the whole, like, pray this prayer, raise your hand, come forward. All these smaller gestures of externalizing what you're thinking and feeling inside all help lead towards, a stronger ultimate behavior as we move across. And so that's the deal on that. So this next one, liking, is the next one that we're going to talk about. And so liking is people prefer to say yes to those that they like. So you
say like, and I think immediately, of course, Facebook.
Yeah.
Right?
Sure,
I mean, that's where I think most everybody, and even with a thumbs up graphic.
Oh, I know.
We're all thinking Facebook. So
Yeah.
this is not Facebook only, I'm assuming.
I mean, it's not, but maybe it kind of could be still, though, too. But I think, Facebook's onto something. So they know like. There's a reason why like was used as the first thing.
Yeah, sure.
It's because psychologically we want to like things, and we typically like things that are like us. In fact, the word like, if I say I like you, I'm actually kind of saying I'm like you.
Yeah, I am like you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that's this weird thing that's happening with like. And so so we have to realize that if you are an 82-year-old man preaching with a dialect from an 82-year-old man, and you're trying to reach a 15-year-old young male, maybe he will love you and connect with you, and maybe he'll like you because there's something that he's getting out of you that he needs for sure. But it's quite possible he's going to feel a dissonance there, and he feels like, I'm not like you. You're making a joke about the internet and not knowing what it is, and you don't know what Reddit is and what whatever PUBG is and Fortnite,
Snapchat, et cetera, et cetera.
Whatever. You're going to speak my language. You're not going to understand my thing. So because of that, I don't like you because I'm not like you.
Yeah, wow.
So this is a huge problem because we've seen a lot of ministries that have a key leader, and as that leader has grown in age and wisdom, then they're still trying to attract that original audience that they had before. And that audience is now, getting farther and farther away, from where it needed to be. Yeah. And so it's important as a ministry to know, could the audience you're going after say, I'm like you? Now, obviously, if we're challenging somebody to growth in a way, we're also attracted to somebody, I want to be like you. Right. So that's the other aspect of this, is it's not always I'm like you, but it's also I want to be like you. And so these are the things that we're drawn towards and attracted to.
And like some of the marketing phrases that we've used and have, well, first of all, there's influence marketers are a lot of conversations around that right now. And I think it's because there's camaraderie in someone like me that's using a product or is living a certain life. And then that phrase that I know we both really like is that people don't buy products, they buy better versions of themselves. So influence marketers being the you're like me, so maybe that product or service might add to me and make me more like you. Like you're living the life that I would love to live. You're happy and I want to be happy. Yeah, we see this. I mean, I see this a lot in marketing right now.
Sure. Well, and it's obvious. I mean, like, if we sold women's clothing or women's shoes or something like that, we're not going to put that on a big, hairy, ugly man, right? You know, it's like that's not going to be. I mean, unless we're just trying to like create attention.
Yeah, it'd be ridiculous,
you know, right? In some way, but if we're trying to show off what the shoe looks like, right? And we're also not going to put it on an ugly foot. We're going to put it on a nice foot, have a nice shoe that looks really pretty, you know, because we're going to try to sell that in its best version of itself. But sometimes what's funny, and I'm using that just as a visual to make people realize, like, well, if your ministry is trying to do this package thing that's really good, but you're applying it in a, maybe it's the way the video content is, or however you're displaying your information out to the world. If it's not done in a quality way that the audience would resonate with, which will be different, right, for every kind of audience, then it's going to feel weird to them, and they're not going to understand the product because the wrapping around it is going to be bad. So I would say the big takeaway on this one of liking is realizing who is your audience and then who is presenting to your audience, and are those in alignment, and would they both be attracted to each other? And if they're not, then, you know, it's important to kind of think through redefining your audience or redefining the presentation to the existing audience that you have.
Yeah.
So this last one is social proof.
Okay.
So I told you that I think there's two. The second one that I think is pretty critical is social proof. I think this is a really, really big deal. And the more I'm watching, and I'm no psychologist, but the more I'm watching this, the more I realize this one, more than any other, seems to be the one that people default back to when they're trying to decide ultimately to make a change. And so people will look to the actions and behaviors of others to determine their own. So,
I mean, I read Amazon reviews, or Google reviews, or Yelp, or whatever the thing is.
Sure.
A ton of those before I make a decision.
Of course.
And that's social proof right there.
Yes, it is. And you know, if I was remodeling my bathroom and you just finished remodeling your bathroom, I'm going to call you and I'm going to say, Daniel, who did you use? If we live in the same town, you know, who did you use? How did they do for you?
Yeah.
You know, what advice would you have? Were they? And I'd ask you probably not great questions like, were they expensive? Did they show up on time? Were they clean? You know, did you have anything stolen? Or I don't know, whatever my thoughts were, I would have those, you know, kind of around that. So,
because I went first,
right?
And it's safer if I vetted them, or I think there's probably a safety thing there. If I had to like dig deeper and play psychologist, it feels like it's like, well, wait, was it safe? Was it successful?
Well, and if we go back to liking, if I like you, then I'm saying I'm like you. And if you had a good experience, and if you felt like it was a good deal, and if I'm like you, then I'm going to feel like, oh, I'm going to have a good deal. So Facebook knows this.
Totally
so now
sense.
When I say I need a plumber, Facebook even changes that post, and it says like looking for recommendations.
Right.
Because Facebook knows that at the end of the day, a key driver of psychological behavior is anyone else that I know that I like. Are they using or this service or this product, or, you know, are they involved in this in any way?
What about the back of books, quotes and whatnot? Do you think where do you think that falls in social proof, or is that like in the authority or liking? I can see maybe a kind of a combination. What do you think?
No, great. So it's clearly social proof, right? Because it's externalized people, but it's also authority. So because it's two key things are happening.
Okay.
One is you're seeing a bunch of reviews. So it's like other people say this is good.
Yeah.
And
if
then
Tim Keller says it's good, well, then it's going to be
good. It must be good. And then, but to that point, and then that name of the person is the authority.
Okay.
So that authority is saying, oh man, not only do a bunch of reviews happen, they're on the inside cover, they're on the back cover.
Yeah.
Oh man, the first couple of pages, they're also reviews. That's all saying like, anybody loves this. So everybody loves this, social proof, and all the important people, authority, love this. And then liking works its way into, because it's like, oh, they're like me. You know, I want to be like them.
Yeah, mostly it's I want to be like.
Well, sure.
I'm not like
I
Tim
mean,
Keller.
you know, whatever. But I mean, that's your call on that. But so there's these 6 things. So if we bring these back up to just kind of look at these 6 things on the screen, we've got reciprocity. That's if I give you something, you're going to want to give something back to me. We've got scarcity. There's only a limited supply, so act now. Supplies are limited. We've got authority, which is this person is an expert and we should follow what they say. We've got consistency, which is this is something that continues to happen. It continues to be something that I'm drawn to because I know that I can count on it. We've got liking. If you like it, I like it, and we've got social proof. So these are kind of our 6 core things. I really feel like when you look at those that reciprocity seems like a really obvious one for ministries to do, because we should be giving. We're giving out.
Yeah, absolutely.
We should be giving content out. We should be giving, gifts out. We should be giving. We should be giving
generous.
people. We should be generous, right? We've been called to give, so we should be giving anyway. So that's a clear one. I think scarcity is one that's to be used with caution.
Scarcely.
Yeah, scarcely. Don't use this one too much. Oh no, let's not. I was like suddenly trying to think like let's pun through all of these different ones. I think authority is a real one, and so I think we do need to be smart about, if this person is Dr. So-and-so and that they have spent their whole life's work focused on this one aspect of the Bible or whatever, then that, of course, we should totally be using that. But make sure that we're doing that within the lane of what our ministry is trying to do.
Sure.
And then I think liking is a really big deal. I think liking is one of realizing, is there a dissonance between the leadership and not? And then, of course, social proof, I think, is a huge one as well. And I think consistency is just key, for us to have across the board on all of this stuff. So
what I love is when we study this kind of stuff and have these conversations, to then open my eyes to what I experience, whether it's through Facebook, like we talked about with the recommendations, or even being served ads, like Google ads on the side of a web page, or when I'm shopping, to see where on a website the reviews are they above or below? Now they're being featured above a description even, because it's you can get into the nitty gritty, but people really like this, so you should buy it.
Right.
They want to push you to it.
Yeah.
But it's fascinating to then, with these psychological pillars, if you will, to look around me and to go oh, there's an example of scarcity. There's an example of consistency. And then, as we, as ministers, our ministry partners look at this, okay, now evaluate how you're doing these things.
Right.
I love these kind of conversations.
Well,
it
it's
opens
tricky.
me up.
It's tricky because I think a lot of people feel like, oh, you're just trying to learn the tactics to manipulate.
Right.
And that's not what we're trying to do. At the same time, we do want people to take a next step. We do want them to take an action. Mm-hmm. And so it's this delicate balance of well, let's talk about this. And these aren't secret Christian technique principles. It's no, these are just common psychological, things that we can learn about the human person that God's created, and so, if I had to pick my 2, though, I think out of all of these, I think I would say consistency. If we can get those people to take those small externalized actions to get them, to push into an alignment and begin to move, I think that's a key one. That quits trying to sell the final deal first. Don't ask to get married before you've asked their name and tried to go on a date, I think is the example. So that's the 6 core persuasion principles or techniques, and I hope they've been helpful to you hearing about them. We would love to work with you if this is something that's interesting to you and you're trying to think through what's a conversations platform that I could be a part of, where I could have all these different conversations in one place. Echo is that tool that we've been making specifically for you as a ministry to use to have those conversations. We would love to have a conversation with you. Please check out echoglobal.org.
If you found this video helpful, share it with a friend and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Make sure you hit that bell so you're notified for all of our future releases. Also, find and like us on Facebook. And we have a bunch of free resources for you at echoglobal.org/resources.